Why is Temu so cheap? You wondered about that? I have been. Every time I turn on YouTube, a review of Temu, which is great. I've gotten a lot of information from that. I just thought that as an American crocheter, economics teacher, working at an international school in Southeast Asia, I thought I would have a little bit of an insight that may be interesting to you. So, welcome to Chris Loves Crochet. I'm Chris. I love crochet and I love a bargain. My favorite people that I watch all the time, their latest videos on YouTube have been about Temu and how fantastic some of their deals are, all of the fantastic items that they have. They're showing all these great items. I just bought that. Let me say, I don't have access to Temu here. I mean, I can look at it, and I've gone online and I've looked at it. I'm in Bangkok, Thailand, and it's not accessible here. However, the same items are accessible here. So let me show you a few of the things that I've seen that I've already purchased. I didn't go out and say, oh, let me find that and I'll purchase it. These are things I've already purchased, and I'm going, hey, I just bought that. When I saw Creative Grandma, she had this same exact travel, says travel with an airplane, colorful life. Life is a wonderful journey. I don't know that she had the kitty cats, but I did go out and look on Temu and found that they have the kitty cats. But I've gotten into this. I bought this because I have a crochet club at school. Like I always do, every school I go to, I bring crochet in because I think it's important. And so I bought this because it was inexpensive and there were a lot of crochet hooks and some yarn and a lot of the notions that we need. So as you open up, it came with, I already took out, and the kids have already used some of the yarn. It came with 5 skeins of yarn, these mini skeins of, does it say milk cotton on this? No, it says Liliarge, and then something in Chinese, and then lots in Chinese. Very, very soft. It feels like a milk cotton, which what I've discovered in doing some research is that milk cotton is not cotton. Some milk cotton is made with cotton, but it's a general term. Comes from when they did make material out of milk proteins, some of the leftover waste from processing milk. You have the milk proteins, Caspian or Capian or something. I don't remember. Then they mixed it with cotton and they made a fabric, or a yarn, or a textile, the generic term, with it. And it was cotton. It was milk cotton, very, very soft. Now, it means very, very soft, made with some milk proteins, I believe, but it's no longer made with cotton. You can still find some with cotton. It's quite expensive. So the milk cotton that Chinese yarn producers typically produce is made with some milk proteins and acrylic, polyester, some of those petrol-based, products. And so that's what this is. That's what these are. Feels like milk cotton, and I know milk cotton now, but it's an acrylic blend, but very, very soft, yummy yarn. Most of it. Some of it is not very yummy, of course, but most of what I have gotten has been pretty good, and fairly strong. Some of it does come, and it's not, the spin is not great on it, and so you can tear it apart with a little bit of effort. But you can do that with some of the more expensive yarn too. It just depends on what you're looking for. This is pretty strong, and makes pretty good project. Anyway, so it also came with a whole, I separated them out because I didn't want the kids to have these really tiny ones, because they'll try it. They'll try anything, right? It came with a whole set of the ergonomic crochet hooks. They work fine. But it has a tape measure. It has a pom-pom maker, some little snips. It also came um, with the set of thread hooks and some needles, bobbin, some stitch holders, some stitch markers, big giant clippy thingy, a ruler, and a nice little case that you can put the hooks in here on the front, and some notions and such, and it zips up and it has a nice little case and a nice little carry handle. Anyway, I will put on the screen the prices, the picture from my Lazada, mostly is Lazada. It's like an Amazon, which is like Temu, in that there are a lot of different suppliers that are showcased on these different webs on Amazon and on Temu that you choose from. So anyway, so there's that. Then I saw this that also is Caron cotton cakes. Caron cotton cakes, calico flowers is what I have found. I'll put it up here. But this is from Lazada, and you can find the exact same yarn on Temu. 100-gram ball. It's called rainbow cotton. They have several different colors. This is the one that's just like the Caron cotton cake calico flowers. And you can see the price difference. Well, you can see it in baht. That's what the Lazada one is. And what it is in US dollars. And today the exchange rate is 34.71 baht per dollar. So like about 100 baht is $3. So that you can kind of compare. So then I also saw this lace yarn. I just bought that. And let me tell you, it is gorgeous. It is beautiful. I have the rainbow one as well, like she did. And I have this one. I used the rainbow one in my handkerchief that I did for my daughter, little daisy handkerchief with the little squares. It's beautiful and shiny and really, really nice. Not soft. It's not soft. It's a thread that it's like a mercerized cotton, very thin thread. Here's another milk cotton that's made with, I'm sure it's an acrylic blend. This is the 3-ply that I use for a lot of things. It's because it's 3 strands that are woven together, but it's like a 2-weight or a 3-weight, a light 3. So I'll put up here a comparison there because they're available there. This is a 50-gram ball. And that's pretty much what you find on Temu is a 50-gram ball. It doesn't say the length. It doesn't say the yardage or meterage on most of these things. Yeah. The 3-ply is about a 2 or a light 3 sport weight. The 4-ply is like a heavier 3 or a really light 4. The 5-ply is a good solid number 4 weight yarn. So if that helps you any, that's what I have found when I buy the different ones here of the same thing that you find on Temu. Also found this chenille blanket yarn out of the package, partly used. I showed that I was making the leggy froggies out of this and an octo. And this I found on Temu and I got it off of Lazada. And I will show here the comparison. So it's the same thing that I'm finding here in Southeast Asia because it's produced in Southeast Asia. Some more of the geeky part of it. As an economics teacher, I was thinking about this and thinking, how can I bring this obsession I have of mine right now into the classroom? Which is what I try to do when something interesting is happening in the world, bring it into the classroom. And bring it into line with things that I am presenting in the classroom so the students go, oh, this is real life. This is relevant to real life. I'm glad I'm learning about this. Or later on, it'll be playing in their head when they're thinking about something. Oh, yeah, Miss Christine, she told me about this. I'm so glad she talked about this in class. I thought she was crazy. I thought she was boring. But look, it's real life. Anyway, we're reviewing or revising for exams coming up. And so I'm just bringing in a lot of the old topics. This is a great time to pull things together. Let me just tell you a little bit about Temu, what I found. I did a little bit of research about Temu, the company. Now, this I got from zdnet.com. There was an article about it. They got a lot of their information from Boston Globe, from the Washington Post. ZDNet is a tech news website that's been around since the early 90s. Fairly well researched and fairly well respected. What they said in their article is that Temu is part of PDD Holdings. It's listed on NASDAQ as PDD Holdings. They began operations in September of 2022, has its headquarters in Boston, Massachusetts. Temu is not accredited by Better Business Bureau, has an average rating there of 2 out of 5 stars. A lot of the complaints are that it takes a long time to ship if they get their items. I do know from other podcasters that they do have customer service. If you don't receive something or if it's not what you ordered, they will refund or send it out to you or whatever. They do respond, but it is coming from companies in Asia. In more general articles, when you look up Temu, it says it is a Chinese-held company. It's a Chinese company. Now, this central office in Boston, is not a warehouse. Why is it so inexpensive? Well, the way that Temu has set up their business is that they don't have a warehouse of goods that they're trying to sell and trying to market. What they do is find out what people want out in the marketplace and find suppliers and order directly from their warehouse. So the shipments that are coming to the US are coming from warehouses in Asia, Southeast Asia, maybe from Thailand. A lot of it is manufactured in China. China has a very low labor cost. Government-wise, politically wise, I don't have a comment on that as an economics teacher. What I do is I bring forth information about what it looks like on diagrams, what it looks like in an economy, how it affects consumers, how it affects laborers in those economies, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. In Thailand, I can tell you, it's a developing nation here. There are a lot of laborers here, a lot of blue-collar workers here. There is a large income gap between the wealthy and the poor, as there is in the US. Cost of living in Thailand is low, is like half what cost of living is in the US. For me, for a Westerner who is looking to lease a condo anywhere from 7,000 to 20,000 baht per month. And electricity is cheaper, water is a lot cheaper, transport, cheap, groceries, produce, really cheap. There's a lot of producers here that there are a lot of people who run their own business. And so there's a lot of people here who are employed and selling and make a living and support their family. And unemployment rate here, reported unemployment, is about 1.5%. And so that's, people find work and they work, and the cost of living is lower. They can be the breadwinner, send their children to school, and the parents can work and make a living making these products. From what I've seen in my limited scope here. So the labor is cheaper. The production cost is cheaper. Electricity is cheaper. Water is cheaper. The resources are cheaper. So it turns out to be cheaper. When it gets to Americans, Temu is selling. They have to pay for the shipping to get it from the East, but that's pretty cheap these days. But there is a markup. There's a markup because cost of living is higher in the US. And so, of course, they want to sell. If they're going to go through the trouble of getting it to you, then they're going to sell it more at a higher price. It still can undercut some of the American made products because the labor is cheaper, the resources are cheaper, the factors of production are cheaper, factories run at a cheaper level, so they can undercut what Americans can produce it at. What does that mean for Americans? So here's where I kind of geek out as an economics teacher. And in class today, I wrote up on my board, and I'll show it here, evaluate the effects of a developed nation, call it country A, increased demand for imports from a developing nation, call it country B. So I asked my freshmen, using a supply and demand diagram, SD, supply and demand diagram, show your best-selling footwear item. I had them imagine they had a factory that they were creating footwear. They were producing footwear item at equilibrium price and quantity. Number 2, list 3 resources used in production. And then number 3, imagine one main resource is now available for much cheaper from a foreign supplier. Indicate which resource, so we chose leather, and show the effect on the diagram and explain the results. So with a cheaper input, there is an increase in supply at every price point. So what that did was decrease the price at equilibrium, decrease the equilibrium price. What does that mean to us? Well, that means that, yeah, Temu, we're thinking about it. Many of us who are watching this are thinking about it as a consumer. I'm watching these podcasters, these YouTube crocheters, and they have a small business. A lot of them have a small business, whether it's a side hustle or it's their primary business, it's a business. And so this yarn, these crochet hooks are resources for their business. So they're inputs for their final product that other people are consuming in America, around the world, but in America. So there are other businesses who are using Temu as input resources who can now produce final goods at a cheaper price. Even if they're buying pens, even if they're buying shelving, they're buying clothes, they're buying t-shirts that then, as She's Got Yarn was talking about, buying t-shirts and then putting their logo on them, an American company buying t-shirts from Temu, putting their own logo on or other logos, and then selling that final product as an American good. They can now sell it cheaper. So consumers are able to buy it cheaper. So then they can buy that product plus other products in the American market. Then I said, okay, so leather. So we were talking about leather as a resource. Leather is also a final good. So if we're bringing leather in from a foreign exporter as an import in the US, what does that do for then the consumer? We're consumers also buying leather because we want to cover a chair, to do whatever. So it's also a final good. It's also with international trade. The domestic leather market has price at that equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Price is cheaper when we're importing from a foreign producer who could specialize and can export it cheaper, because in the East he can produce it cheaper. So now, as a globalized economy, we can import this final good cheaper than we can produce it in the US. So price decreases. So with price decreasing, quantity supplied in the domestic market decreases. Quantity demanded in the domestic market in the US increases. So there's a shortage in the domestic market because people are falling out of the market because they can't afford to supply it at that, or not willing to supply as much of that good at that price. So there's a shortage. So it's made up for in the imports at that cheaper price. And what that does is it frees up producers in the US of whatever that product is to produce something else that maybe we as Americans can specialize and do cheaper. There's a lot of stuff that we can produce and at a higher quality and cheaper, and just can produce that other nations can't produce. So as a consumer, that's what happens. Now, as a whole economy, yes, this picture I'm fixing to show you, yes, I drew it in my apartment. I have whiteboard sticker on my wall because I'm that much of a geek of an economics teacher. So I drew up on my dining room wall what happens when the U.S. finds new, cheaper imports for production inputs and consumer goods. So this is an ADAS model with the price level and the real GDP for the vertical and horizontal axis, showing aggregate supply and aggregate demand and long run aggregate supply and the initial price level and output equilibrium where it all crosses in black. What happens? Resource costs decrease, which causes an increase in aggregate supply. Increase in imports causes a decrease in aggregate demand. However, increase in consumption causes an increase in aggregate demand. An increase in gross investment also causes an increase in aggregate demand. So we have two increases in aggregate demand with one decrease in aggregate demand. So overall, it's an increase in aggregate demand. So I show a shift, a rightward shift, an increase in aggregate demand. Those two shifts show an increase in our output. The output on the ADAS model is our GDP. This, ceteris paribus, our long-run aggregate supply will shift to the right as well to follow that full employment output with an increase in GDP and a decrease in unemployment. So overall, cheaper imports, if you just look at the economy, overall cheaper imports can help an economy, can help our economy grow. That's what I have to say about that. Now, if you are individually, you're looking at firms, you're looking at American businesses, and you're looking at Made in America and supporting the local producers, not necessarily a great thing. As I teach my students, they are to evaluate what happens, not write a biased paper. They are to, this British curriculum, this international curriculum requires them to evaluate. So positives show an increase in the GDP. Negatives, they would be required to write about how some of the resources will be leaving some of those developing nations and won't be as available for their domestic product. The world price will be increasing because they are exporting it for a higher price. So if they want to buy it in their own nation, they have to pay a higher price for it. Some of the producers for the import in the importing nation will lose business. People will lose jobs in those businesses. So looking at it from a microeconomic standpoint, there are downfalls, there are negatives, detractors for that must be evaluated as an economic student. They must evaluate the pros and cons of them and then come to a conclusion based on what they have, if it's a good idea or a bad idea. And it really depends on that student's perspective, if they're going to which conclusion they're going to come to. There's not a right or a wrong in the conclusion as long as they support that conclusion in their answer. So that's how I handle that. And that's how I handle it in real life too. So I don't want any political whatever comments, how dare you, Made in America, you have sold out, blah, blah, blah. Please don't. Please don't. I'm an economics teacher. I teach it from both sides. I really do. And I teach micro and macro, and we see it big picture, small picture, medium picture, consumers, workers, laborers, unemployment, employment, inflation. Didn't go into that here, but yeah, that's a part of it too. It's a confusing, complex, convoluted web. I know. But some of my geeky input from a geeky American crocheting yarnivore economics teacher in Southeast Asia, teaching at an international British school. There's a little bit of something for you. I hope you liked it. So let me know in the comments what you thought about it. If you can give me kind of balanced, that would be great. Just I don't want all out. I don't want any political. I don't really care about all the political stuff. But if you have some comments, economically speaking, I would love to hear them. Well, how what do you think about it? What do you think about Temu? What do you think about Temu? They ship directly from suppliers, so they cut down on the overhead. and they ship directly from suppliers whose overhead is really cheap, directly from the warehouse in a cheaper nation. That's how they keep it so cheap. We're an expensive nation in the US, is what I mean when I say we. In the US, expensive. It costs more to run a factory. It costs more to hire people. It just costs more. So, how do you balance that? Trying to, as a producer, you also want to keep costs down. How do you balance that? Things that make you go, remember? Anyway, I hope you liked it. Give me a comment. Um, uh, Thumbs up if you liked it. Otherwise, just ignore. It's okay if you just ignore. Temu, come on. Everybody's into Temu right now. So I thought I'd throw in my 2 cents worth as an economics teacher. There you go. Please subscribe to the channel if you like it. Give it a thumbs up if you like it. If you like, notify all. Then you'll know when I send more out. Another podcast or whatnot. And be true to yourself. Be kind to yourself, to others, and find your joy. I love you guys.